welcome to Database Design, applying data types to your attributes. Once again, I am Bob Niels. The objectives of this particular video is to understand what a data type is. In doing so, we'll talk about the different types of data types, and then we'll go to our ERD and apply the data types to our attributes. All right? So what is a data type? Well, a data type is a type of data. How's that for really laying it out there for you? So a data type for most parts is classification of data, which tells the compiler or the interpreter how the programmer intends to use the data. That particular definition is really more on the programming side of things, but it also holds true when it comes to databases. You're telling the database how you intend to use the data. And in doing so, you're telling if it's a number, how big the number is going to be, and so on. Same thing in programming. So data types is very important when it comes to software developers. We need to understand how they work and understand how to apply them. But all in all, they're not very hard. We just need to tell, again, the computer, in this case, the database, what type of data we're using and what it's going to be for and how much space we actually need based upon the type of data we're going to be using. It's very important. I think we talked about this before, that space is everything to a database. The smaller the database, the faster it's going to actually search for stuff. Make sense? So what we're going to do is we got to tell the computer, if you will, once again, database, about each attribute, and we need to tell it what type of data is. It can only be one type. You can't have multiple types of per attribute. It has to be one or the other. All right? Now, these data types can get very specific. And matter of fact, if you look at the list for SQL Server, which we'll start diving into here soon, the list is long on all the different types of data types that you can actually have. That enables us to be very specific and very efficient in regards to how we want to store our table. But for sake of getting started with this discussion, we kind of want to look at really the high level ones, all right? And if you look at it, for the most part, these high level ones that I have sitting here on this slide really represent probably 95% of the data types that you're going to use for any particular database. There are other ones out there, and we'll talk about those as we move forward, but for the most part, these are the ones that you're going to deal with most of the time. Text, number, date, and Boolean. And Boolean just every once in a while, not very often, but text, number, a ton, date, every so often, and Boolean every once in a while, okay? So our goal is to identify what type of data we're going to be having based upon our attributes. It's just that simple. So in this case here, we talk about a text. Now, what's a text? A text will be an alphanumeric character. Let's break that apart a little bit. Alphanumeric. It can be either alphabetic or numeric, but it's going to be basically a data type in which we're not going to do any calculations against. If we're going to do calculations against it, it should be a number, okay? That's how I always differentiate it. If I'm ever going to do any kind of calculations with any of my data stored, it should be a number of some sort, okay? If it's not going to be that, and it's more of a representation, or in this case, a characteristic that defines something and it's alphabetic and or numbers, but it'll never use for a calculation, it'll be a text. Another term for this is string, okay, or a character. So you'll see a lot of different terms for this, but we're going to use the word text in this particular video. So for the most part, actually we define these attributes with these data types. We have first name, last name, address. These are all text fields. These are all strings, okay? Date of birth, obviously that's a date, okay? And so we would define it as such. Social security number, is it a text or a number? What do you think? Would you ever do calculations with a social security number? In some cases, it's actually stored with dashes. So with that said, it would be a text in this case. So some numbers like student IDs that you have here at Cincinnati State, you're not going to do any calculations with it. So thus that can be a text also. Make sense? All right. Course name, number, and start date. I got this wrong, but I'm not going to go back and fix it at this point. So course name would be text, course number would be text, and of course start date would be a date field, right, with not be a text. And then finally, the ones for our instructors, text all the way down to data hire, which would be a date. Does that make sense? Pretty easy, right? Let's just keep this high level. So as you're doing your design, if you can at least determine the type of data that these have in there, the type of data that your attributes are, now we're moving forward as we complete our design of our particular database. And based upon what type of database we're using, meaning a DBMS we're using, if you recall what that term means, if it's SQL Server or Oracle or Access or whatever, we would then look at their list of data types that we could actually use to once again store it the most efficient based upon what we said the high level should be. Hope that makes sense. If not, you'll understand a little bit more in the future. All right, so how do we apply it? Well, once again, we'll go back to our Visio document. All you need to do here to apply a data type is come back here, and we'll just put a dash there and type in what each one of these are. And so as you do your assignments, and you would continue on in our design phase, this is actually what you would do. Just double click and just put a dash on what these actually are all the way through. Okay, I'm just going to do a few more here as we kind of go through it. Okay, get the idea? That's how you do it. Nothing too hard here.